Welcome to Inside the Sports Car Paddock, brought to you by Cooper Tires and the Justice Brothers. We have 5 guests for you this week. Took last week off as our man Jeff Braun, very, very busy cat. Caught up with him here, talking about 2 very pertinent items, in particular in his world, knowing that we open every episode of Inside the Sports Car Paddock with some form of technical or engineering-based discussion, knowing that very recently, Jeff's long-term job here with the Core Autosport team and the rest of those working on the Core Daytona Prototype International program be coming to an end in October as the team shuts down its DPI effort. So Jeff, as a long-time contract race engineer, someone who has not worked full-time for a team quite some time, shares this exact dynamic. What is it like being a, quote, fly-in race engineer? How do you do that? What does it consist of? How is it different from someone who is truly in the shop every day of the week? Also, we speak about Jeff's future and what it's like getting the news, as this happens every year to many, many folks, learning that the team you're with is either shutting down or they just don't want to work with you anymore. With Jeff, it is the former, not the latter. Interesting, though, just to hear from someone who found out very recently his stability in IMSA, employment-wise, and that of his son, who he engineers at the team, Colin Brown, is going to change completely for next year. So we talk about that, and he also spells out how, as someone who works remotely most of the time, how you do that, how you interact with the team, and make sure that all information and tasks are handled the way that they should leading into an event. Then we move into my man, Jeroen Bleekemolen, who just completed his very first American short oval race Saturday night, and then went on and won Sunday's Michelin GT race at Virginia International Raceway, part of IMSA's final GT-only event of the year for the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, taking that win with his friend Ben Keating, who will be driving with this weekend in Silverstone as the two of them embark upon the full WEC calendar with the Project One team. So caught up with Jeroen about what it was like going short oval racing, and that was the bulk of the conversation because it's just awesome hearing about it from him. And then also this overdue victory for the team coming in their number 33 Mercedes-AMG GT3. Then we moved to 3 interviews captured by my Week in Sports Cars co-pilot Graham Goodwin. First one kicking off with a fan of the podcast, Nick Cassidy, talking about competing in Japan in both the single-seater and Super GT formulas, talking about the door that's beginning to open for him in both single-seaters and the top level of sports cars, which is pretty awesome. And here in the American front, we had Nick over earlier in the year, part of the AIM Vassar Sullivan Lexus endurance program. Then we moved to factory Ferrari driver Miguel Molina on his elevation to the full GTE Pro WEC squad, and also on running in 4 different championships in a single year on behalf of Ferrari. Then we close with the awesome, truly awesome Chris Goodwin, who was back last weekend at Suzuka for the Intercontinental 10-hour race after a 22-year gap. Also talks about the Parabolica McLaren F1 GTR, the Garage 59 Aston Martin GT3 he's involved with, and how the McLaren project could have been with entirely different beast, the Ferrari F50 GT1. Amazing stuff captured by our man Graham. So let's get going. Jeff Braun, Jeroen Bleekemolen, a.k.a. Jeroen Bleek. That sounds like a good American short track driver. Nick Cassidy, Miguel Molina, and then closing with Chris Goodwin on Inside the Sports Car Paddock, brought to you by Cooper Tires and the Justice Brothers. Jeff Braun, we took a little bit of a pause last week, knowing that you were extremely busy with a variety of things to look after on the home front. So we haven't had a chance to catch up on some changes that were announced here, upcoming with our favorite Core Autosport DPI team, one that you have engineered that program for a good while, not only on the DPI front, prior to that in LMPC, LMP2, you, John Bennett, and your son, Colin Brown, done some awesome things. John announcing that he's taken a step back from the full-time racing role, told the team, hey, let's start looking for some new employment opportunities for next year. That includes you. That includes your son, Colin. And so since we focused every week here on Inside the Sports Car Paddock on some form of technical item with you, some sort of vocational engineering-related thing, well, pal, you're this week's topic in a roundabout way. Let's start knowing that what you do as a, call it consulting engineer, you're not a full-time engineer working in a shop every day for a team, but you are someone that is hired by a core autosport to bring your talents to the team. Mm-hmm. Let's start on something just really basic, and some of our listeners have asked about. How are you doing? What's it like learning before the season's over that there is indeed a final day of, quote, employment for you with the core autosport team? What's that been like, and how much of a shock to the system is it to go through?
Yeah, I mean, it's not as maybe bad as some people might think, because as a consulting engineer, you kind of have that mentality of it could end at any time. And it's happened to me many times before. So, being fired is, okay, I was fired. Fortunately, I wasn't fired because I did a bad job. So that's one good thing. But it's happened before. I mean, I worked for, just as an example, and I'm not the only one. A lot of my engineer friends have had similar circumstances. I worked for Team Scandia for 7 years. They eventually stopped. I worked for Crone Racing for 4 years. They eventually stopped. I worked for Level 5 for 5 years. They eventually stopped. Core Autosport's going to be ending at 5 years. The one thing about racing, and especially when you're in sports car racing, when there's a lot of it is a sportsman enthusiast who's funding the program, actually, even factory efforts, they're just as short term. We saw the Ford effort. How long did that last? Not about the same, 4 years, maybe, something like that. It always comes to an end. So I've always joked that the best thing for me is when we leave a racetrack and it's race 1 or race 2 of whatever of the season, and the team owner says, all right, we'll see you at whatever, Laguna. I'm like, whew, I got a job for next week. I kind of look at, I could be fired at any time after any race. And so that's just what you have to live with. With Core, it's disappointing. What a great team. It's disappointing because we can't keep doing the fun things and having the successes that we had in the past. That's what's disappointing. What's really great, I think, is that John Bennett has been able to call his career on his terms when he wanted to. And, some people are like, oh, that's too bad, John's retiring. Well, no, if John didn't think that retiring was the best thing for him and his life and what he wanted to do or achieve or whatever, he wouldn't retire. He would keep going. So I'm happy for him because he's making a decision and doing what he wants to do. I have a sneaking suspicion. I know John enough to know that it's going to be, I can't picture him standing at Daytona on pit lane next January watching. He's the kind of guy that's like, Jeff, you got to put me in at 2 a.m. I love that 2 to 3 a.m. stint. I got to drive then. He loves that stuff. So he's a racer, but I'm really happy for him. And it's just what happens. It happens to consulting engineers, and it's not just me. Some of our fly-in mechanics are the same way. Core, fortunately, has the Porsche GTLM effort, and there'll be some, natural turnover of mechanics, quitting or retiring or whatever. So the most of the people that were full-time in the shop on the DPI effort can be absorbed in that natural turnover into the GTLM effort. So it's not like a mass exodus where it's like, oh my God, it's, everybody's being fired and there's a lot of people on the street. It's really not that case. And the fly-in mechanics, and myself, that's part of life. That's what we expect. That's how, off looking for the next fun gig, basically.
And so that's the topic we're going to feature this week. One that I know very well, in that in the final many years of my, quote, career on the team side, that's exactly what I did. Hop on a plane to engineer an Atlantic car at the Canadian Formula One race. Hop on a plane to engineer a Pro Mazda at Sebring, and so on and so forth. Some of this was IndyCar related. A lot of it was GT. Did a lot of this in World Challenge, for example, in the GT category, where would fly in and be the team manager and engineer for the weekend. And so it's that thing where you are not a permanent employee. You're not getting health benefits. You aren't in the shop full time. You are often in the shop, though, some amount during the calendar year. But you indeed are someone who, if we're talking about in person, having face-to-face conversations with folks, the majority of that happens at the races. As you said, fly-in is really the key mechanism here for how these roles take place. Why don't you tell folks about this, Jeff? Because you've done both, full-time,
right?
And in recent years, you've been the fly-in race engineer. What's it like? What is this like, especially for those who might want to consider such a thing and be the next Jeff Braun who isn't tied to one program?
It's been made easier for sure in the last 10 years with our connectivity, internet, instant communication, Skype meetings, all of that kind of stuff. So for me, it's actually better for the team because frankly they don't have to pay as much because I'm not in the shop all the time. They don't have to pay me health benefits. They don't have to pay me to be a guy who shows up at 8:00 in the morning and stays till, like the crew most of the time, 8:00 at night. And that's a short day, but they don't have to pay me to do that. I get to stay at home. It's still a full-time job for me at this level with Core, and I'll just use that as an example. But there's many other engineering friends of mine, especially in IMSA, that do the same thing. I haven't taken a poll, but I'm guessing well over 50% of the race engineers in IMSA operate like I do. They're full-time race engineers. It's all they work on, primarily all they work on, but they're just not in the shop, so they can stay at home. So I get up in the morning, I have my breakfast, then I go into my office. On a normal day, I'm in my office for 8 to 10 hours. The shop guys, we have a system at Core called Asana, and there's a bunch of them. Basecamp is another one, but it's a task project management software. And there's a computer on the workbench. There's one in the team manager's office. There's one in the crew chief's office. There's one in my assistant engineer's office. And I have it up on my screen. And it's every task that has to be done to get that car ready to go to the next race. Every engineering task, electrical task, mechanical task, loading task. And you can literally see the things being checked off or worked on. I know exactly what the mechanics are working on at any second while I'm sitting in my Texas office and they're working in Rock Hill, South Carolina. And I can see things being checked off, and I go, okay, the gearbox is rebuilt. I got to get him that diff settings or the diff build because I know by after lunch he's going to be on the diff thing. So I can work on the diff setup and send that to him. I can, they can ask me questions I can send to them. So it's for them. And for me, it's as if I'm sitting in the office right next to the workshop, but I'm in Texas, they're in South Carolina. So from a efficiency standpoint, there's no difference. I'm there when they're there. I'm working on my stuff. After every race on Tuesday, everybody travels usually on Monday. On Tuesday, we have a giant Skype conference call. They go in the conference room in Rock Hill, big TV screen and conference speakers and stuff. I log in to that from Texas. Our systems guy, Lee, logs in from Indiana. Our TC and engine tuner, Henry, logs in from Seattle. And we all have a big, giant conference call to go through all the things that went right and went wrong, and basically to build that list I just described of what needs to be done to prepare for the next race. So it's really like I'm there. But I do have the flexibility. If I want to go push some dirt around with my bulldozer outside for an hour, I can go do that. And I just fly into the races, and it's not like, wow, I haven't seen you in a while. I mean, we're in constant communication the whole time. And that's what allows it to work. The whole working from home actually ends up being more efficient for the team and for me, and less expensive. So a lot of people do it that way, and I think more and more are doing it that way because it's possible with the technology we have today.
So looking at the methodology, which you've explained some of here, which is fascinating, of being able to observe things taking place real time in a shop, half a country away. Mm-hmm. Part of what you're doing, if not a big part of what you're doing at home, knowing that you're also, as we've discussed on the show many times before, Mr. Damper, knowing that you are working on damper development, you are working on all kinds of things, arriving at a baseline setup for the upcoming race at event X. How are those things then communicated to the team, and then also, maybe in a similar fashion, either observed or confirmed that all of those settings have been applied to the car before it's put into the trailer? And maybe, Jeff, also cover the fact that just because the team does the setup on the car in the shop and rolls it into the trailer and sends that truck down the road, it's not as if you roll straight onto the track afterwards.
Nope. Yeah, it's so our methodology, and it's been similar on every other team that I've worked for. So I'm going to assume that the others do it this way today as well. I will come up with a setup, and that's through the simulation work we've done. Tyler Neff, my assistant engineer, will work on some of the damper stuff that I've asked him to do. He'll do that in the shop, and then I can see those files directly, and then we'll discuss what we want to do for damper builds and things like that for the next track coming up. Then I will the first thing I'll issue is a build setup, which is not the alignment, not the ride height and the toe and the camber and the corner weights and things like that, but the build setup that the crew needs. They need to know what gear ratios to put in the diff. That's a long lead time thing. They need to know how to build the differential with what ramps and plates and preloads. And along with that, I give them a build of alternates, like an alternate diff to be built up that has different ramps for different handling characteristics. Alternate dampers that might be built up ready to go with different spring rates on them, possibly. Alternate aero setups. So I'll send them the build list, like the suspension geometry locations that I want. And they'll get that about the time they unload the car from the last race, get a set down done on it, get it torn apart. Then they'll have my build list by the time they start working. That's usually maybe a week before we're going to load it in the trailer. So they can start building the car. In the meantime, I'll work with the sim guys and with Tyler, and we will come up with what we think is the best starting setup and things we want to try. And so that comes down to experience. I'll talk to Colin about it. Hey, remember last year this happened? What do you think? So it comes down to experience, talking with the driver, talking with the sim guys and what we've come up with, what things they've run. And I issue a setup sheet. That goes to the shop, and it goes on this Asana program. They have it instantly. And when they're done building the car, they'll go on the pad in the shop, setup pad, and they'll set the car up exactly to that specification. Ride heights, toes, cambers, casters, wings, everything exactly like that setup sheet. Then and this is maybe the crudest part of the whole thing. They'll snap a picture of their setup sheet. It's a handwritten sheet that they do, on the setup pad. They'll snap a picture of that and text it to me. Immediately when they're done with the setup, I have that information. It's kind of like an approval thing. I'll go, yep, looks great, perfect. Then they can load it in the trailer. So we call that the load setup. So there's a starting setup, a load setup. Goes in the trailer, travels down the road, bounces around, shakes around, gets to the track, and they reset up the setup pad, level it and everything so it's perfect. Put the car back on the setup pad and do what we call a setup day setup. So they just check it to make sure that nothing's really changed. And that's when I'm there. I show up, and if I had anything that they wanted me to look at that they didn't just send a picture or nowadays it's almost seamless with there's almost nothing I have to look at. We actually do what I call a shared note. Apple has a note app, and you can share it with somebody, so it's stored in the cloud. And I share it with my crew chief and my car chief, Freddie. And those guys I can be in the office during a practice talking with the drivers, debriefing, and it might come up that, we want to change the rear springs. We're going to change them for sure. We're talking about that. Well, instead of having to interrupt my meeting with the drivers, run out the trailer, go find Freddie or Ian and say, hey, we want to change the rear springs, I just type it in the app right away. Rear springs to whatever the rate is. They get an automatic notification. They look at it, and they start changing the rear springs immediately. They can report back on that app the amount of fuel they pumped out, any concerns they have, maybe with brake wear or brake blanking or anything like that. And I can send back any changes on that app back and forth. So it's almost like our workshop app, but it's quick, super real time, right at the racetrack. And, that's kind of the whole process to get us to the first practice session. And then we use that in between practice sessions throughout the whole weekend.
Why don't we close on this, Jeff? So the role of an engineer, race engineer, we've discussed that many times. We'll continue finding angles to discuss on the show, but I think folks have a pretty good grasp what you do, how you do it, where you do it. One angle that might be interesting to use as we say farewell here. So as a fly-in race engineer, that means typically yourself and many other fly-in race engineers have more than one client. That's one of the advantages, right, of being a freelancer compared to a full-time employee, is if you want or need to have multiple income streams, or you just like variety. Well, That's a great thing you can do here by not being a full-time race engineer working just for one team. How do you balance the satisfaction, happiness, feelings of being fully attent in giving you the client you're with this weekend 100% of your attention, while they surely know that maybe the following weekend you'll be flying off to work with a different client, right? It's not necessarily like being in a polyamorous relationship, but it's maybe a little bit like being in a this is kind of the Utah approach to race engineering where, so I know the answer because I've had to do it. I don't know if I did it well, but what's it like knowing that you don't want to give John Bennett or Core Autosport or whomever the feeling like, boy, I know he's here with us, but it sure seems like his head's focusing on next weekend's event, or vice versa.
Right. No, you've been there, and it's exactly right. And there's a lot of us that do that. I mean, Ferrari Challenge is a great example. It's an IMSA-based series, so they actually, for the most part, make the Ferrari Challenge schedule not conflict with the WeatherTech schedule, because a lot of the drivers coach Ferrari Challenge drivers. A lot of the engineers engineer Ferrari Challenge cars. Rick Mayer, the race engineer at Reese, does Ferrari Challenge cars. I do Ferrari Challenge cars. Bill Riley does Ferrari Challenge cars. A bunch of us do that. And so for me, the thing is, my Ferrari Challenge client, and this is the only way I would work it with any Ferrari Challenge or SRO, Blancpain customer or anything like that. Core Autosport has committed to me in a big way, and I'm committed to them 100%. So my Ferrari Challenge client, Mike Watt, understands that if I'm scheduled to go to a race with him, for instance, and 3 days before I'm supposed to leave, Core calls up and says, man, we're going to an emergency test. We got to go test. That I'm going with Core, and I can't do his Ferrari Challenge race. Even though it's a race weekend, it could be the championship deciding race weekend. He understands I'm going with Core. So it's very clear cut. There's no, I wonder how it's going to work, or I wonder where Jeff's focus is going to be. Mike Watt knows that when he hires me to race engineer his Ferrari Challenge car, and he's happy with that. It works great. And so what I do in return is if I know I'm going to Ferrari Challenge race and it's a week before, a great example is coming up. Ferrari Challenge race in Homestead, not this weekend, but next weekend. The very next weekend is Laguna WeatherTech race. I will have all of my core stuff done, completely done. The shop will have everything, all my pre-race strategy stuff, all my analysis, my strategy programs, everything's set, ready to go for Laguna before I step on the plane to go to Homestead for the Ferrari Challenge race. So that there's never a possibility of me during the Ferrari Challenge race not focusing on Mike Watt because I'm trying to sneak a little time in to do some core autosport work. And it works the other way. When I'm doing stuff for core, that's 100% focus. And if I can't balance those two, then I will have to give one up. And it's, Mike understands. There's been, this year it happened. Mike Watt was going to go to a test, and I just said, oh man, I got too much here to do. I gotta stay. I can't make the test. And he's like, no problem. Understand. That's the deal we made when we did it. So I'm a pretty simple-minded guy. I have to focus on one thing super hard, 100%. And so that's the way I do it. And it seems to work out pretty good. Everybody seems to be happy. I was going to say they still pay me. Well, I guess not from core anymore. But again, fortunately, that wasn't because any of us did a bad job. It's just, the natural flow of race engineering and the consulting engineer. You need to expect that.
Well, let's say goodbye to this episode, Jeff, with giving folks a little bit of a glimpse, hopefully a little bit of sunshine here. Know that you have received some strong inquiries talking about keeping your current client happy, but knowing that you'll be looking for a new client in the wake of Core shutting down its DPI program. We can tell folks that the Jeff Braun, I want you to engineer for us hotline, it's been ringing, right? It's a good thing.
Yeah, it's always nice to know, when people call up and say, hey, what do you got? I know you don't have anything going with Core. If I put this deal together, could you come and engineer it? And this guy, we might be making a change. We really need somebody to do this. Would you be interested? From some pretty, high level operations, which is flattering. And, everybody likes to hear that their services and their skills are in demand. So yeah, I'm pretty happy about that. And it's always nice to be able to have some opportunities to keep getting paid to do what you love. And so I haven't decided anything yet. There's some things out there, but I know it's going to be tough to come up with something that is as fun for a dad as to be able to run his own kid, engineer his own kid. But who knows? Maybe there's a package deal out there again, or if not, I'll find something fun and exciting and new and different to do with some good drivers and teams, like has always happened. Each time one of those big teams has shut down that I've been part of, I thought, oh, that's it. I'm going to have to retire. And I first thought that in 1997 when Team Scandia shut down. I said, oh, that's the end of me. I'm done. I'll never find anything else. And then found 3 other good teams in the past 20 years since then. So you probably can't get rid of me that easy.
Wow. Well, as always, Jeff, thanks for taking some time here. Usual interesting insights into the world of technology and the professions, all on the technical and engineering side of our beloved sport.
I appreciate it, Marshall. We'll talk next week. Maybe we'll hit some technical, nuts and bolts kind of thing. We haven't done that in a while, so maybe that's next week.
Sounds like a plan.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm speaking to NASCAR short oval legend Jeroen Bleek or that Dutch guy who won the IMSA GTD class with Ben Keating and the Rally Motorsports team on Sunday at VIR, Jeroen Bleekemolen. Who do I have on the line here?
Yeah, well, I wasn't sure either after Saturday night. I had some identity crisis there because, man, that's a total different world. But, yeah, great to try it out and great to see another side of, the sport, although I think it's a totally different sport than what we are doing.
Well, let's start there. When Ben started sending me some photos of you trackside testing at the South Boston circuit and whatnot, I loved it. And I think I loved it the most because it seems to fit your personality, right? I mean, we know you as a guy, throw you in a GT car, prototype, whatever, and you're at home in both. But your spirit is one where you don't see yourself as a, quote, sports car driver. You see yourself as a race car driver. Tell us about that curiosity of wanting to go and what might be different for you doing a short oval racing here in America on a Saturday night, but really, spirit-wise, it's not too far from who you are.
No, that's right, for sure. No, I've always, throughout my whole career, raced many different cars at the same time or in the same season. Like you said, going from LMP1 to a Formula car to a GT car, even to small touring cars. So I'm used to jumping from one to the other. But this was a total new thing. But I love it. I love racing. I love trying new stuff. And for sure, this got me out of my comfort zone because it was so different to what I'm used to. I didn't know what to expect at all. I just knew that this was not going to be easy. But it was a lot of fun. That's for sure.
So when you're racing your Rally Motorsports / Keating Motorsports Mercedes AMG GT3 and you're rubbing fenders with someone, I know in the back of your mind you have to be thinking, oh, that's going to be expensive. I shouldn't do too much of that or I'm going to get yelled at. What's it like going into a race Saturday night, short oval, where it's not as if you're supposed to hit one another, but contact is not frowned upon. If anything, there's a little, maybe an expectation that a little bit rougher driving is accepted there. What was it like getting into that mindset?
Yeah, that was hard for me because I believe in our type of racing, in normal sports car racing or endurance racing, it's a non-contact sport. And for sure there's contact, but from my point of view, the basic should not be that you have contact. And it can happen in a fight. I've had many contacts, but that's just the way it goes. That's sometimes racing. You push the edges and you go over it sometimes, but in that type of racing on the short ovals, it's very normal. And it's totally different. One of the tough parts for me was you don't really have time to watch your mirrors because you're working the car the whole way through the lap. Really, you don't really have straight, so it's all the time turning left. And you just got to rely on the spotter and listen to him if there's a car or not. And then, of course, there's a little bit of a language barrier, I would say, because, they have for sure a lot of NASCAR language, which I'm not familiar with. So it's not always easy to know, like, can I turn in or not? If you turn in, I saw in the race before my race, I saw a big accident happening, a guy turning in on another guy, and he hit the wall pretty hard. So when I saw that, I walked up to my spotter and said, hey, how should I handle that? What are you going to say if a guy put his nose in? and all that sort of stuff. So it was very uncomfortable, but at the same time, I think it's good to get out of your comfort zone and try something new, and just push your limits.
So you started ninth, Jeroen. Tell us about the race itself, how it went for you, and also knowing the technical side of what you do. You're so well known for having great chassis feedback and really grasping that side. What was it also like in the race to feel not just the fuel burning off, but tire degradation and such? It's not as if you come to pit lane and you've got 7 people jumping over the wall like you do, or however many in IMSA to take care of the thing. You're kind of out there on an island.
Yeah, it was very different. I think I did a pretty decent qualifying. I was sort of midfield. I think I qualified, like you said, around 9th position. Some guys opted to start from the back because that would get them extra points for the national championship. Because they would pass more people and that would get you points. So actually, I started the race in 6th, which got me really excited, but also a bit nervous at the same time because you're really far up front. There's plenty of cars behind you. You can't screw it up. You gotta do it right. I had a great start. Ran for 5th for I think a couple of probably 2 or 3 laps, and then the first fast guys came from behind, and that was tough. I had 2 or 3 fast guys passing me, so I ran, I think, probably like 7th for quite a while. But then, I had probably 10, 15 laps on my own where I had no pressure from behind. And as I said before, I had no time to watch my mirrors because I was too busy just dealing with the car and not hitting the wall. And then finally these fast guys from the back came up to me, and that was really tough because then there's a guy on the inside, on the outside, and they're so well known to this. They know how to pass people. They know how to go fast the whole time. They know how to be on the limit the whole time. So we can relax on the straight a little bit when we do our normal road racing. But in this type of racing, there's no moment to relax your mind or body. So it goes on the whole time, and that was really tough. When those guys started passing me, I had a hard time to get back into the rhythm and drive my race really. But that was also interesting because it's the way you got to focus is much more in a way than we got to do. Sometimes we have to drive longer, but they have to do it all the time, 100%. If you give up a little bit, you're going to lose position. So you got to be on it the whole time.
What was your takeaway after the race, knowing that we had Nick Tandy giving the command to start engines, we had you in the field, there was a pretty decent IMSA feel to this Saturday night race. What was your takeaway afterwards? Did you get a chance to speak with any of the competitors you just met and whether they enjoyed having you on track? I'm sure for the regulars who are there every Saturday night, might have been a little bit of fun having some folks trying out something new from a totally different world of racing.
Yeah, it was really nice to see how good they treated me. A lot of people told me beforehand, it's rough racing. New guys won't get an easy time there. But actually, a lot of these guys came up to me and had a little chat and asked what I was doing in my normal racing and even gave me some pointers. And I was totally open to that because I could use all the pointers I could get, really. Right before the race, I was still talking to Sellers, who was not Brian Sellers, but the other Sellers there, who's a big name there, and he was really helpful. He gave me some pointers on the start, which really helped. And I was amazed by how cool they all were to me because I think it's easy to push someone a little bit wide and get someone a little bit out of comfort. So it was great to get all the support from all the people there.
Other than the advice to turn right once you get to turn 1 on the start, I think the rest of the advice they gave you was pretty good. So what do you think about next year, Jeroen? You think this might be something you look forward to doing every visit to the VIR GT weekend, or do you wear yourself out too much? You'll have to wait and see. Just curious.
I don't know. We have been talking about this for a couple of years now. I think it started already 6 years ago when I was with Ben and Bill Riley. racing at VIR, and we talked about, hey, let's go over to South Boston and watch the race on Saturday night. We never did it, but I think about 3 years ago they started talking like, hey, we should not just watch, but we should put you in one of these cars and see how you get on with it. So I had no idea what to expect, but I liked the idea of that, and I said, yeah, well, if we can find a ride, I'm up for it. And I'm thinking the same now. If there's a chance, I would probably jump at it again. It was pretty rough because everything was really exciting for me. The car was on the edge for me. I had to really work hard to keep it under control, which wore me out a little bit. Especially the seat position wasn't great yet. The preparation isn't very long. I drove over from VIR very quickly, jumped in the car, did a couple of practice laps. So I was worn out Saturday night. And even Sunday during our IMSA race, I could still feel it. My arms were sore from just from all the tension you get into it. So it was not ideal, but again, you get out of your comfort zone, and I think sometimes that's also good. So I really enjoyed it, and if there's another chance, I would probably do it.
I love it. Well, the best part of your weekend in terms of doing something you're familiar with, being in that comfort zone, finally getting a win. I know it was said on the broadcast. I know many folks have shared the same thought. Boy, it is strange, my man, to get down with 2 races left to run in the season now. At this point, yesterday obviously it was 3, but strange to get to the end of the season without seeing you and Ben in victory lane here in IMSA at least once. You guys finally did get that win. Tell us about the race yesterday. The GTLM fight was good. Maybe not a big surprise with how the race ended in GTLM. GTD, we can't say that, Jeroen. We could not say that at all. It looked like about 27 different people were going to win that race. What were your thoughts watching Ben out there and yourself as we started to get into the flow of the race? Did it feel to you like you had a chance to win, or did it feel just as unpredictable to the rest of us who watched?
Well, going into the weekend, I knew we should have a good chance to win. We were in pole position and leading the race with Ben at Road America the weekend, the race before. So I was hoping to repeat that, but unfortunately, Ben had traffic in qualifying on the drying track and was the first one to take the checker. So we had to line up 7th. Passing is really tough, so I knew it was going to be really hard to gain positions. The field is really tight at the moment in GTD. The level is unbelievable. It's a Pro-Am class, but it's really cool to see that also in M. So the qualifying start, it's really close. There's some really fast M's out there. Luckily, Ben is usually one of the fastest, but it's really great to see all that competition. And then obviously with all the guys finishing it, it's also really close. I think all the cars, for sure the winner is always happy and the guy who can't win is not happy. But I think the cars are pretty close in terms of performance. So, yeah, you can't put a foot wrong anymore or you won't win. You won't even be in the top 5 anymore. You got to do everything right. And then if you have a fast car, you might win it. So it's about perfect execution from the beginning. So starting 7th, I'd never expect us to win. Although I knew if there was a yellow, then that might help and give us a chance. We did get a yellow, and that made the race really exciting, I think, because then people were on different strategies, and that's where we really did a good job. I think we pitted earlier than our competition, tried to save some fuel at the end, and that worked out perfectly. But also Ben had an unbelievable stint. Twice being behind a train of cars, fighting really hard for position, and twice he passed many people. Maybe a bit of luck in there, but with all the bad luck we've had, I think he deserved to drive through there, and not just luck, because it was also just going for it and knowledge of how to deal with these situations.
Let's close on this, Jeroen. So. This is going to be the dumb, obvious statement alert here. this hasn't been the happiest year of competition for Ben Keating or you, the two of you as teammates. Obviously, Le Mans is going to leave a lasting sting. Hasn't been the most fun year for sure. How does this win help relieve or release some of the frustrations and pressure you guys were feeling? There can come a time where if the season continues to go badly, enjoyment can start to diminish a little bit. Just curious how this late season win might change any mindsets or re-energize you and Ben as you look to close the season and move on to new horizons here almost immediately, kicking off a full season campaign in the FIA WEC.
Yeah, I mean, I did get kind of nervous at the end of the race. I had Mario Farnbacher right behind me, and it was late yellow. So then you had the whole field behind you, and one little mistake, and you're off the podium. So I was like, okay, we can win this, but one little thing goes wrong, and again, we're not on it. We're not on the podium. So that for sure put some pressure on it, and I was really relieved to just get the job done and do it. But all in all, I was feeling pretty positive already, even though in 20 years of racing, this has been my worst season in terms of results. We've been so unlucky. We didn't get any results this year because of different circumstances, but there was so much bad luck in there, and so many times we could have, should have, but it didn't happen. So this year I learned a lot from Ben, because he's a really positive guy. He, the Monday after the race, he's already passed it. Maybe not completely past it, but at least his mind is in a good place again, and he's looking forward. And I think in the past I was maybe, living too much with a bad race. It would take me 1 or 2 weeks to get over it. And even with the Le Mans thing, I was devastated when it happened, when I heard about it. I think so was Ben. But then when I read his first statements, and when I spoke to him the next day, I already started feeling better and positive. And today I really feel proud of the race we've done, and I'm not too I'm really not thinking about what happened anymore. I'm just thinking about what an awesome weekend we had there, and how cool it was, what kind of race we did. So I think I've learned a lot from him in that respect, just being maybe more positive and just moving forward. So it's been a really good learning year with that, even though it was a tough year. I've learned a lot how to deal with bad weekends or bad races. So it's good. I think it can only help for the future, and hopefully, this win will help us, getting the positive vibe into a new start, into a new championship, where I also think we have a great chance to do well.
Looking forward to it, my man. Always a blast to see the adventure that is your life as a professional race car driver and all the cool things you get to do. Definitely fun to see that you and Ben are now off, going to do something not necessarily new for you, but definitely new for Ben, in the latter stages of his career, maybe getting a chance to go and tour the world, enjoy sports car racing, and also with a really good Project One team coming off of an amazing Super Season and Le Mans, where they had lots of success there. So thanks as always, brother, for spending some time. And I think Jeroen Bleek, I need to get some t-shirts made up of America's new greatest short track oval driver.
Yeah, if I'm back next year, we should definitely have some shirts and some stuff to sell out there, because it was fun. And again, if I can do it again next year, I would do it. It was a lot of fun, and not always easy. It was hard to do it on a Saturday night. We had a rain delay, so I ended up really late in my bed, but still, I'd do it again.
At the Suzuka 10 Hours and in the Roto Corsa Well, team area. I'm sure we'll be hearing in the background from Nick Foster. We usually do, but it's. But actually, here to have a conversation with the guy I'm meeting for the first time, Nick Cassidy. We've been seeing a lot of you. We've been hearing a lot about you. We've been reading an awful lot about you. But here at the Suzuka 10 Hours, with kind of a couple of stories underway. One is this Hub Auto Ferrari effort. We'll talk about that in a short while. But the other one is confirmation this morning that you're going to be, I suspect, for the first time in an LMP prototype, LMP2, for 3 of the 4 races of the Asian Le Mans series with Eurasia. Tell us a little bit about the car.
Well, firstly, mate, I've got to say thank you for getting me on the show. And I have tuned in before. So,
good stuff.
I've been getting a lot more, obviously, let's say, involved in the sports car world in the last couple of years, and so I've been trying to do my homework and find out what this is all about. And yeah, really cool to be doing Asian Le Mans for sure. I think prototype racing, first of all, looks very enjoyable. Levels very, very high, whether you're in GT3 prototype, wherever at the moment in the world. So yeah. It will be my first time LMP Suzuka. I did a test one day a couple of weeks ago in Sepang, and just looking forward to that.
Your career path has been very different to many young and talented drivers. You obviously massive success with Super GT, great success at the moment in Super Formula. GT cars, I can't qualify a GT 500 as a prototype. It looks like a GT, but it's a prototype car.
Yeah.
GT car here, single seaters and Super Formula. What's the plan?
Yeah, I must say that my career has been very strange. I did a lot of stuff in Europe on and off for a couple of years, and I don't really think that I gave it. Of course, I gave it the best shot I could, but financially, whatever, maybe I wasn't able to do as much as I needed to. But I was really fortunate in 2014 to get a chance in European F3 with T-Sport and 3-Bond, which I could get a result at Macau, which led me to Japan. And honestly, I feel from that Macau weekend until now, I've had a completely different career compared to before that. So that's where I feel my career has started, and I've been able to show who I am. I've been in the single-seater kind of wave, I guess, since that point. I'm similar to you. I classify a GT500 car as a more single-seater prototype car. They've got massive downforce, massive power. So, these last years doing Super Formula and Super GT500 together has been really an ideal program, and cars that actually aren't that different. And that's where my career has been, I guess, heading. And to now jump in GT3 for this weekend is a complete kind of new experience for me. Obviously I did Spa and I did Daytona, but I find I'm still like a fish out of water when I jump in these cars, so it's for sure
the downforce.
Yeah, exactly, and tire and whatever, but I think it's a good challenge. You need to be I think strong at adapting to new challenges and new scenarios, so I don't see it as a negative, but in terms of my career and where I'm wanting to go, it's still on that prototype single-seater road.
LMP2 is another step. It's another kind of branch line, if you like it. But reading some of the kind of their local media clippings lately, you've got this career in Japan and Asia now. It's almost like Back to the Future. It's an avenue that a lot of guys that ended up in Formula One, ended up in Top Line Motorsport, took some years ago, but actually less fashionable now. But it is working for you. You are now being linked with some extraordinary stuff that might kind of come your way.
Yeah.
Does it feel that way?
I'll be lying to you if I said it didn't feel that way. I'm not really the type of guy who dreams about something that's not possible. So I think last year was a really surreal year for me. I mean, I came into 2018 with a GT500 championship, and that it took me a long time to realize what I'd actually done. I was still looking up to the drivers that I was racing against, let's say. I guess because of age and because of what other guys had achieved, even though we had number one on the door. So that was a very strange feeling. And last year, the big thing for me was to back up my Super GT performance with Super Formula. And I could really get that going, and it clicked for me last year. I went into the last race leading the championship, and okay, I just missed out, but I felt like it was a great year. And then this year, I wanted to obviously repeat that, and I've changed teams, which I must say hasn't been for the reason of thinking I'm going to gain performance by changing another team. Like I realized that I was in a very good spot last year. The team around me was working really, really well, but I was wanting a yardstick for myself. So I made the move to join Tom's and be next to Kazuki Nakajima because of what he's doing in LMP1, and it was a really good reference for me. And so that was the challenge I kind of gave myself. And now, leading the championship, I wouldn't say it was expected, but we've had a very good season this far, and it's potentially made other things possible, let's say.
I try not to be one of those journalists that asks stupid questions. I'm going to ask a really stupid question now. Yeah. Given the opportunity, if the single-seater ladder opened up, or the hypercar ladder opened up, which way would you prefer to go right now? Because obviously Toyota, there is that potential. Single-seaters, they're looking for talent still. And they're now probably for the first time looking for talent in probably not the traditional ways, whether or not that be Formula One direction, whether or not they be IndyCar direction. There are opportunities now for guys with talent.
Oh, for sure. I'm not a guy who has sour grapes about saying, oh, you get the seat because of money. I don't believe that's always the case. You see guys, look at Alex Albon, for example, Russell, who haven't had the backing but have the talents and have got there. So I definitely don't have sour grapes about that, and I'm thinking honestly, if the Formula One door opened, I'd love to take it. I believe I've got enough experience now. I'm in the form of my life for sure, and I think with where F2 is at and everything, and it's been quite common for drivers to come to Super Formula post F2 before F1. It's for sure not impossible, but I'm not putting all my eggs in that basket. And at the end of the day, if that doesn't happen, I 100% want to be ready for hypercar, which is a lot of the reasoning behind doing this LMP2 championship, and to get the experience there to be ready for a chance with Toyota and hypercar.
There's another part of the story, which is these things come in a cycle. And at the moment, New Zealand motorsport is on an absolute upward curve. We're seeing huge successes from Bill Bamber, from Brendan Hartley. You're another name that is mentioned in that company. That's a nice place to be.
Yeah, 100%. Those guys have been doing a great job for many years, and I've been the generation behind. I've always come through the ranks with Mitch Evans and Tom Blomqvist. It's been the three of us, same age. And Mitch is going really great too, formerly Jaguar. So for sure, it's a great company, but it's.
I must admit, it's a bit of an eye opener for me that you see Brendan Hartley as an elder statesman. That's quite.
It's true. But motorsport doesn't stand still, so it's great that we're all going well. But I mean, man, it can change tomorrow, so you got to keep pushing for sure. Yeah.
What next? So we've got 10 hours in what we don't know yet, whether or not it's going to be streaming wet or blisteringly hot conditions. You've got 3 races to look forward to in an LMP2. You've got 2 championships you're still very much in contention with, leading Super Formula and second at the moment.
Second in 500.
In 500?
Yeah.
It's not often been done that a double championship could happen, but it could be on.
Yeah, well, I mean, last year I lost both by a total of 2 seconds.
Wow.
So I know that
I should say, by the way, it's obviously audio only, but I can see your face, and that still clearly hurts.
Oh, it would hurt anyone, right? Yeah. But it's just driven me to get the job done. I mean, amazingly competitive championships. Yeah, but everywhere it is these days. You know, you look at IMSA, you look at WEC, you look at this championship. I think it's so hard to say, well, what's the most competitive. I think a lot of places are really, really strong at the moment, which is great for motorsport, and it's great to watch different types of racing. But yeah, that's for sure my focus this year is to get the job done in these two championships before I look at anything else. Yeah.
And is there interest? I'm not asking you to tell me who there's interest from, but are there some interesting conversations in the background right now?
It's racing, there are always interesting conversations.
I'll not push any further. Nick Cassidy, delight to meet you. Delight to see you here with what looks like a really competitive three-man crew. Yourself, Heike Kovalainen, and the bloke sitting next to us.
Bronze driver.
Bronze driver.
We're going for the Pro-Am title this weekend.
Missed out my one spot last year.
In what's looking to be a very competitive field, it could be a good race ahead.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me on the show. Awesome.
Suzuka in the car guy racing pit with Miguel Molina. Miguel, well, I guess the first word to say is congratulations. Full season deal for the FIA WEC in the 71 car. How long have you known about that deal?
Well, it was something really expected. Well, from my side, I think, because I really wish to go there. I think it's the maximum place to be in the Ferrari GTD program. So that was my aim from the beginning of my career here in Ferrari. So I had the opportunity to work with them 3 times already in Le Mans. Being as the third driver there, and I already knew that it was the place to be. I think I did a really good job in the beginning, in the last 2 seasons, learning a lot with the car, and doing a lot of mileage with the GT3s and also with some GTEs in the ELMS. So I was really ready for that challenge. And it came this year, so I'm really happy. I'm really also happy because the trust they put on me to do this championship, and for sure I will try to be at least as good as it was Sam in the car, because for sure Sam is a really good driver, and he really put the level really high. So I will try to be at least in the same position as him.
It's going to be, we'll say, just 3 factory teams, but it is 3 very good factory teams. It's AF Corse with Ferrari, it's the Aston Martin Racing guys, and Porsche. We saw what kind of war you guys can put on for us at Le Mans. You think it's going to be as tight for the season?
For sure will be tight. If you see the last years, it's been always tighter and tighter, and for sure will be a tight competition. But I think we are coming in a good way. We had a really good result in Le Mans with the sister car winning the 24 hours. So we are improving. We are working on the members in the Ferrari group and with the AF Corse, and we are improving as well some parts in the car that we were struggling. So I think we are in a good position to start fighting from the beginning, and we know the car. I think right now is the oldest car in the field, the oldest spec, let's say. But the positive thing is that we know really well the car, and right now we have a really good group for starting the season.
They, of course, from Ferrari have a record of placing their factory guys in customer programs alongside the factory programs of the WEC. You're here with Car Guy, Asia Le Mans Series champions, of course, last year, and James Collado, as well as Kit Cozzolino. Is there anything else at the moment that you can tell us that's on the agenda for you in racing?
Well, I'm still focused on my 2 championships that I'm doing. Actually, this is my 3rd one, so actually it's been a busy year for me again. Last year was a bit busy one, and this year I'm doing almost 4 championships. I will finish the year with 4 championships. So I'm doing the Blancpain America, where I'm leading. Unfortunately, I cannot be in the next round in Watkins Glen, and because it's clashing with Silverstone. So this will private me to probably score a championship this year. But it's a shame. But at the other thing, I will be in Silverstone for the WEC. And I am also leading the championship in the Blancpain Endurance with the S&P car. So he's only missing 1 race in my home track. So we have a really good chances to win the championship as well there. So it's really, really important as well to finish in a good way in Barcelona. And the Intercontinental GT. I mean, this race I did the Laguna Seca, where we could win with the Hub Auto. So far it's been a really good year. Busy, but winning races and being in the podium is always important, and I think the hard work is paying off. And like I said, this helps also to be in the WEC for the 1920 season.
A busy year for sure, and let's see what happens after this season, how much silverware you'll be taking home. For now, Miguel Molina, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
In the Garage 59 pit at the 10 Hours at Suzuka, and with, well, a man who's got some heritage here, but not for quite a while. Chris Goodwin, no relation, at least I'm not sure, I don't think so. 22 years since you were here last, Chris, here in the Aston Martin, but back then it was a very different car.
Yeah, you've just shown me a pretty cool photograph of the Parabolica Motorsport McLaren F1 GTR that I raced here in '97 with Stefan Johansson and Gary Ailes. And the one and only time I've been here before, raced here before. So the 2 laps of dry running that we've got before quali, it's all come flooding back.
So the boys are leaning on you heavily for your track knowledge then?
Yeah, they shouldn't, but there's not a lot of track knowledge going around in this team. Com and the team raced here last year with the McLarens, and as you know, Garage 59 and I were very intrinsically involved with McLaren up until quite recently. Me for 20 years, the 20 years since '97, up until a year ago, and the Garage 59 team won the Blancpain GT Championship in a McLaren 650 in 2016.
Let's talk a little bit about the contrasts. 22 years ago, another golden age of GT racing in a very, very different way. Talk to us a little bit about what this scene was like at that stage. It was getting onto a kind of global setting. It was sort of on the peak, wasn't it, on the kind of crest of a wave before the manufacturer money came flooding in and things started to go all wrong.
And it ruined it. Yeah, look, it's great. You know, I've been on this journey with Stefan Rattel since '95, I think was the first time I raced in one of his races in Zhuhai, and that was with the Lotus actually. And you know, he's a fascinating guy. It's amazing what he's done with this scene. It's had various chapters, and when I was trying to be a racing driver, that's what 97 was all about. You know, we were out here. It was amazing, a fantastic opportunity for a young driver. You know, we were out there with the big names. It wasn't a big grid. It wasn't like as big as this, and it was certainly not as big as the Blancpain grids we get, 70 cars at Spa 24 hours. But it was a very, you know, it was a high quality grid. But now the depth of quality throughout this scene, Intercontinental, but particularly the Blancpain Endurance Series back in Europe, is amazing, and it's such a healthy scene. So yes, back then I was inexperienced but very serious. Now I'm very experienced, and doing this really for a lot of fun. It really complements my job, which is developing road cars, but this is great fun.
Come back to another tale I think I remember you telling me in the Parabolica days in a moment. Let's talk a little bit about GT3. You're right, the scene is comprehensive now. It gives teams, it gives drivers, it gives manufacturers, for that matter, an opportunity to do all sorts of things. Series, championships, one-off races, cherry picking. You're working pretty closely at the moment with Alexander West. He's a man with a plan about his own enjoyment and about what he wants to do with Garage 59. Just how many options do you have to go through before you get to the stage where you agree on a programme?
Well, I think that the amazing thing is that really with the GT3 platform that exists now, you can mix and match and pick and choose. It's such a... you can come up with a bespoke program to suit absolutely anybody. So it's not really difficult to come up with the ideal program because it's so flexible, and all under one organisation. You don't have to change the cars. The team could really race in the States one weekend, in Asia the next, and in Europe the next. It's it's terrific. And for us as a team, Garage 59, we've reborn ourselves as an Aston Martin operator now with these two GT3 cars. We like the Intercontinental Series. Alexander likes the Intercontinental Series. I think the European Championship is really great. That's always got to be your mainstay. If you can do well in that, we've won that championship. We'd like to win it again. But again, it gives it something for everybody. There's a category within that race for amateur drivers only. There's a half and half for silver drivers or Pro-Am. So you really can, pick your class. There's something to go for absolutely anybody. With us, so we run a pro car here at Garage 59 that we fund ourselves, but we also run an AM car, which is myself, Alex West and Chris Harris. We've been quite successful in that from time to time. We've won that category quite a few times in races. We haven't won the championship, but it's perfect because it's for older guys, less experienced guys. It's got a nice tone to it. I hope it doesn't drift into being too serious with too many young,
and whippersnappers.
Yeah, there's a place for them already.
Yeah.
Silver class or Pro-Am class and all of that. So yes, I have to say, I'm here 22 years later. I'm having much more fun. I'm enjoying it a lot more. There's zero pressure, but the competition is stiffer, I'd say, here. The times are closer across 20, 30 cars than they were 22 years ago. But the number of F1 GTR models I've signed in the last couple of days is amazing. So the passion is for McLaren, and the history that we had and they have here in Japan is still amazingly strong.
Slight pause because I might have to edit this because I'm not sure you can answer the question, but I recall a conversation we had. It nearly wasn't a McLaren, was it, for that programme?
Correct, yeah. I mean, the fact that I had a 20-year career at McLaren was a stroke of luck, because for 1997 I was due to race a Ferrari F50 GT1 car.
And you drove that car?
No, I didn't drive it, but I went to Ferrari, I went to Maranello, we watched it test. Nicola Larini drove it. It was all looking good. Programme was more or less all agreed. And then when Ferrari chose to do customer engines and supply Sauber in Formula One, the GT1 programme was canned, maybe for other reasons as well, but that was kind of the reason we were given. And so we had a few months with no programme. Then all of a sudden the team was able to buy the last McLaren F1 GTR that was available, and off we went. I raced that, tested that, was immediately testing for McLaren in their endurance programme, and it snowballed rapidly for 20 years at McLaren. And I have to say I enjoyed more or less every minute of it. But yeah.
And you've got Sauber to thank for your career at McLaren.
Isn't it funny how fate works, and when you've been around in racing for this long, I've got loads more stories like that. You just can't believe why things happen the way they happened.
Well, that's one more follow-up on that. Because you observed it, because the team were looking at it, how good could that F50 GT1 have been?
Fabulous. I mean, it was a great basis for a car, wasn't it? Super engine. I think the regulations were free enough for them to have been able to make it really competitive. It all depended. That was the key moment, the pivotal moment. It depended on how much you were going to throw at it. And so the McLaren programme, exactly a case in point. The first half of the season very strong. McLaren had a test car, we were out testing, the teams were pushing. It was all about Le Mans. Post Le Mans, I think Ron sold the test car to Japan to race out here, I believe. Testing dried up. At the moment that Porsche, Mercedes-Benz were cranking it right up, and they put the effort in, and that set the bar.
Yep.
If you weren't doing the same sort of program, you were nowhere.
Well, you're certainly somewhere here. We're back at Suzuka. Have fun.
Thank you very much. I certainly will.